Let's do a little
4,
exercise.
1,
Element 115, essentially non-existent.
3, 4.
And he told police he was able to time travel because aliens filled his body with, you guessed it, alcohol.
Mitch, I would love to know what you are sipping on.
Oh, this is just Coca-Cola.
Standard Pepsi?
No,
Coca-Cola.
it's Coca-Cola.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? I have a question. Is it rude to drink during the podcast?
No.
Because I
drink
feel
drink
like
booze or drink anything.
Drink anything, because like I've been watching some of our podcasts, and I noticed that I drink a lot during it. And oh, look at you, show off over here, double fisting it.
You get parched when you have to talk as much as we
coffee
do.
and electrolytes. Look out.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just
no,
living it
because I
up.
feel bad, because I feel like it's exclusionary to the people watching. Like, hey, look at me, look at this Coca-Cola I got. Too bad you can't have some, huh?
They can get their own drink. They can pause the show or
Everyone, if you're listening, I know we just started, but just pause the show real quick. Go and grab yourself a nice Coke or any other caramel colored beverage.
Yeah, get
Or
yourself
beer,
a nice
whatever you
snack
want.
and a drink. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want you to
cozy
feel
up next
left
to
out.
us.
Now, here's another question, Mitch.
Yeah.
I'm going to spin it right back at you.
Okay.
Caramel or caramel? How do you pronounce it?
Oh, I often alternate between the two.
That seems about right.
Depending on, I'm gonna pretend that there's a usage, like a rule for the usage, but there's actually not.
Yes.
Sometimes, I want to say, like, when I'm using it as an adjective, I'll say caramel, but when I'm using it as a noun, I'll say caramel. Like, oh
That's
boy,
so
this
Mitch.
caramel tastes delicious, or as opposed to, oh, those caramel apples.
Right.
So, but
I like that. I can think of a very similar thing, but I want to know how Mike and Jarvis feel about the pronunciation of said word.
I'm caramel. That's how I've always pronounced it. Yeah. What about you, Mike?
I thought there were different words.
Oh,
Caramel?
Yeah, I thought like
that's even more interesting.
yeah.
caramelized.
Uh-huh.
Is it spelled caramelized?
I believe.
I think it is. I think it's
so. I believe
caramelized.
so.
Or maybe it's just caramelized. They get rid of an extra A in the middle.
They get rid of the A and replace it with an I.
I just want to know how you say it.
I think they're different words.
Wow, they're not. I mean, not what I'm talking about. Caramel and caramel. It reminds me of Caribbean and Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm gonna go watch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna go watch the Pirates of the Caribbean, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go visit the Caribbean islands. you know?
Yes,
It's very
yes,
different.
yes.
It's different things.
I used to know people growing up too that would pronounce bagel in two different ways.
Bagel.
Yeah, boggle was the other way
I've
they
never
would
heard that
pronounce
one
it.
before.
It's
You guys all pronounce it bagel, right? You guys are normal human
I've
beings.
always called it
Bagel
a
is-
bagel.
yeah.
And the other one is Mario. So I know a lot of
Mario.
people say
Oh,
Mario.
Mario and
Especially from
Mario.
around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Mario Bros.
Super Mario and his
Is it
brother
the-
Luigi.
And I
What's
find,
the official Nintendo way?
I find the
Luigi
people that
with the
pronounce
RG.
it. I find the people that pronounce it Mario also say boggle, like or bagel, or however you bagel,
Wow.
however you want to pronounce bagel.
Isn't Mario the official Nintendo way to say it?
Probably.
It could be, but they're wrong.
Is that just like how the Japanese pronounce it?
I think it would be. Because there's no short.
They do their A's or
sound like-
A's over there.
Yeah,
But Mario himself calls it Mario.
yeah. I don't know. I'd have to look at the
Mario.
katakana of how they actually spell Mario. Because it could be that they spell it like, in English it would sound like AE, and that would give you that Mario sound.
Mario,
Yeah,
Maybe,
like a Tool album.
yeah.
Anima. Anima, however you pronounce. How do you pronounce that album title? The A, that weird AE, the Eon Flux AE letter.
Fuck.
Aeon Flux.
Aeon
Yeah.
Flux.
You say Aeon?
I always said Aeon, but
Yes.
I've
Aeon.
heard
The
That's how
Tool
I pronounce
album.
I've heard
The
that
Tool
it's
album for me
supposed
was
to
always
be
Anima.
I
Eon.
don't know what it is.
So
Is this like a podcast about pronunciation?
I
now?
think
It
so,
should be.
guys.
Phonetics?
fuck
This
all
is a
this,
podcast about
Fuck
phonetics.
fuck all this
Off the goddamn rails.
paranormal fucking cryptozoology trash. Let's just talk about. Let's get hooked on phonics. Welcome to episode
you-
1 of the Beasty
That
Boys
works
Hooked on
for me.
Phonics special.
If you thought that we were like half-assing our expertise in like the paranormal, wait till you hear us talk about phonetics because we really don't know what we're talking
We
about.
have no idea.
The research we've done even less.
What are you talking
it's-
about? I have a doctorate in linguistics.
Oh, from where?
Oh, from the University of the Bry Institute or
Doctorology?
whatever. The same place that accredited that guy in Ancient Aliens.
Wait, who? The Greek dude? The,
Yeah.
That guy?
George Soulakis?
Yep.
Yeah.
Same university. Him and I were in the same class together. We both were majoring in phonics, but then he took the Ancient Alien pill and he got hooked on that instead.
Get him on the show, Mitch. Why have we not gotten him on the show?
Yeah, I'll shoot him an email. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, do it. Get him on here. I want that madman on here talking about aliens.
Speaking of aliens.
Yes.
All right. So you guys know those mystery monoliths that had been popping up?
Yes.
Right? All right.
Popping up and disappearing and popping up again elsewhere.
Yep. So, people thought it was aliens. Then some like art group claimed it was them, but there's a good chance that it wasn't actually them because they're like that this art group that takes credit for like everything, and there was no proof, right? So let me.
Has Al Qaeda issued a statement?
No, surprisingly not yet. I'm sure it's coming, but I want to hit you guys with something I read the other week. So, was the monolith mystery KFC's marketing strategy? So here's the deal. KFC just released a new video game console.
Yeah, the KF console.
Yep.
Yes.
That amongst its many features is it has this like compartment that you put your chicken in that can keep it nice and warm while you play your video games.
That's pretty great.
But more importantly for our purposes, so in the announcement video that they released, right? Smack dab in that video is just the monolith that was in Utah as like a set piece of the fucking commercial. And the thing about that blows my mind, right? So let's just suppose it wasn't aliens for a sec, right? It would have to be KFC because otherwise they're using some dude's art without his permission. So
Oh.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think you're on a
Unless-
solid point there.
yes.
Unless it's bait to find out who did it. Because then the artist would have to file a lawsuit putting themselves on paper.
Wow, that's next level.
Yeah. So like
KFC's like, we need to find out.
yeah.
We're gonna try to
So-
bait someone into suing us.
Exactly. So either KFC put the monolith there and it was a marketing ploy, or they're doing like 4D chess and they're making it so so that so whoever put the monolith there has to come out and be like, "Hey, you're using my work. I need compensation." Or they're blowing the lid off this whole thing and they're going to prove once and for all that it was the aliens.
Fucking amazing.
I'm hoping for
I
the
just
latter,
love
to be
Colonel,
honest.
I love the idea of a Colonel Sanders sitting somewhere being like, it's time for them to reveal themselves.
We need to know who they are.
I need some 4K ray tracing with my chicken. That's all I can think. I don't know why they would make a console, but anyways.
11 herbs and species in the United Aliens.
Nice.
Well, welcome to the podcast, everybody.
Yes, welcome. Mitch,
Welcome
that was
to Beasty
nice.
Boys.
That was a nice little hot button topic to talk about to start the show. I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It could also
First.
it could lead into this news article that I also discovered. that I'm
here
sure
we
you
go. I
guys
love
are aware
segues.
of. Yeah. So you guys all heard about what the Pentagon was saying? They have 180 days to
Yep.
disclose UFO information.
Oh, yeah.
I heard, what is it? I think Marco Rubio snuck that into the defense bill, right?
So great. Just
Yeah, the
fact
federal
that it's
funding
there.
bill, and COVID relief.
I'm sorry. I'm unaware of. Could you explain a little bit more? I don't really know what. So there was a new defense bill. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, he put in a sort of a clause that states what about aliens?
Basically, the Pentagon has to reveal all their UFO information in the next 180 days. They have it's basically he gave them like a time limit on when to release it all.
Wow, what a
and I think
hero.
it begins today, right? January 1st. Happy New Year's, everybody, by the way.
Dated.
That to me emotionally feels the same as KFC making a video game console that also has a chicken heater in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why
Same,
we're just sliding things in a little bit. you know?
same
Just like,
spectrum, guys.
yeah.
Dude,
But,
this
yeah,
is
I
a new
mean,
way
I
of doing
hope
things. We live in the era of the combined package.
Yep.
Can you imagine how fucking
Just like how this
gross
is a
that
phonetics
console would be?
podcast in addition to a paranormal podcast.
Right.
Dude, my controller, my video game controllers get gross anyways. I can't imagine having a KFC chicken console. Like how disgusting that thing would get.
And like you're touching it and you're pulling your chicken out and you're eating it and then the grease is going back in. It's caking.
Like how often do you have to clean it? Like, are you just gonna
And
let it
the
be
kind
like your
of person
microwave?
that has it, probably not the same kind of person that would clean their console after
Hell
they've
no.
eaten the chicken.
I want. Does anybody have like? I mean, I don't want to bring it back to the KF console, but are there like system specs for that thing? Like, is there? Do we know what kind of hardware is in that thing?
It's actually like a pretty decent computer, basically, from what I read. It's got like a $2,000 graphics card in it or something.
Does it run off Windows?
I don't know if it runs on Windows, but I was looking at like it's got like a
I
super.
think it runs on
expensive-
chicken.
It might be, dude. What if that's how you power it? Is you have to put the chicken in the chicken heater while you're playing, right? And that generates the heat. That actually, you know what?
I think that's what it is.
Shouldn't you be concerned about that thing overheating, right? Because not only now if it overheats, not only is it gonna fry your console, it's gonna fry your chicken.
It's gonna over fry your chicken.
Exactly.
And that's more devastating, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Dude,
That's dry.
that
It seems like it's gonna
bucket
dry out
of
your chicken.
That bucket of popcorn chicken cost me like $5. If they over fry that, I'm gonna be so heated.
Wow,
I
this
like
thing.
the idea of a whole bucket of popcorn chicken.
Yeah, this thing it's a computer.
Yeah.
VR ready, 240 frames per second. Oh my goodness! All right, enough
Who's
of that.
making the VR rig?
Cooler Master's putting the computer out.
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell VR.
A couple
Blast
of
yourself.
chalupas. Put on there.
They're gonna make third-party peripherals. It'll be like a Crunchwrap controller.
That would be fucking awesome. I would love that. Yeah.
Oh, anyways,
A Mountain Dew cooled system.
And then Pizza
Baja
Hut's going to
Blast.
publish the games for the console.
oh my goodness. Oh, so what are we talking about today? We've already gone way off. We're already 15 minutes in, and we're already way off the rails.
That's all right. It's fun when you do that.
Yeah.
But I have a question. If people listen to this and then they started telling other people that there was going to be Taco Bell VR headset with the KFC machine, at what point would that become an urban legend?
Ooh.
Well,
Ooh.
I mean, I think if there weren't articles about it on all over the internet, then it might be a little bit more of an urban legend. But that, I mean, what exactly makes an urban legend, Mike? How would you describe an urban legend, or like what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I think urban and legend are different words. Second,
Yes, I'm talking about the two words together.
yeah. I don't know. I've been having a difficult time resolving this for myself because there seems to be so many different things that we've already talked about on other episodes of the show that could potentially fall under the category of urban legend.
Agreed.
But emotionally, it feels like there should be something very specific to that. You know, not like pornography, I know it when I see it. You know, like an urban legend, I know it when I hear it. It feels like there should be something more specific. Unless, like, is Bigfoot an urban legend? And does it prefix urban necessitate a populated environment?
No, I
Throw
don't
those
think.
questions right back.
Throw it back in your face.
Yeah. Now you do it.
To me, like an urban legend is like it's a story you heard as a kid that kind of has been told over generations. A good example would be like I think one that a lot of people have heard is the driving down a street and a car comes at you with no headlights on, and if you flash them, they find you and murder you.
Yeah,
Right.
That was an
It's
urban
a gang
legend.
initiation. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It was like some of the Latin Kings or whatever. Whatever the hell it is. But
Yeah.
that's to me, that's what an urban legend is. It's something that's kind of been like passed down. But it also, a lot of these urban legends, like I feel like there's regional versions and then there's worldwide versions. You know, like the story, the one I'm going to talk about in a few will be. It's actually kind of resembles the Jersey Devil, which I think a lot of you guys are familiar with. It's a hockey team named after him, all that stuff. But yeah, I think it's just kind of like these stories adapt depending on the region and sightings and all that stuff. But I even think Mothman could be an urban legend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that creature.
That sort of like speaks to what Mike was saying. Like there are a lot of things that we talk about on the show that we have talked about or we will talk about that will sort of fall underneath this category, because I think a lot of the time when it comes to an urban legend, because it's passed down, usually verbally, a little bit more folklore based, it is not necessarily backed with like substantiated evidence as much, because it's a lot of he said, she said, for lack of a better term, right?
Folklore is a good word too to use,
especially
to
like when growing up, right? Mike mentioned things that you heard. Mike or Jarvis, one of you guys said that things that you heard, like maybe at the lunch table, right? Or like on the bus, or like I remember very vividly getting a letter in my mailbox as a kid to tell you not to flash your lights at cars with their lights off. Like this was a paper that was passed around my neighborhood. Yeah, like someone put in everyone's mailbox that was like, hey, there's this thing going around, and it's like, don't flash your lights at cars without their lights on, because they're looking for victims. And if you were to flash your lights at them, like, because you're just being kind, saying, hey, your lights are off, that they're going to turn around and murder you. And that this was this was like, I mean, we say that is passed down like verbally, but this was actually like written down and put in my mailbox, in my neighbor's mailbox, when I was like 12 years old or so. I remember this happening at my childhood home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is so weird.
Yeah.
It's like a chain letter, right? Like OG chain letter.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a chain letter where like you were supposed to pass it along like to someone else in the terms of like restuffing it in an envelope and sealing it and mailing it. This was like someone just put a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. They folded it 3 times and like slipped it like in mailboxes in the neighborhood. Like, not even like in a stamped. Like there was no way of tracing it, which makes it like folklore. It's like, okay, where did this really originate? Like, how long has it been going on for? Or where did it come from?
I'd like to imagine that the guy who put it in your mailbox is also driving around your neighborhood with his headlights off. He's just trying to bait people.
So. He's murdering people. He's like, you didn't listen to me. I sent you that letter.
This is what happens when you don't listen to a prophet. Oh my God. Yeah. It's great. Like, is that what, is that what makes it an urban legend, is like the fact that it has gone viral, so to say?
I think so. Yeah.
The story has been told to so many people.
Yeah. Cause then like the media might pick it up or the newspaper might pick it up, but it's still like, I hate to use the term unsubstantiated again, but it always is like, well, where did this, like, what's the source of this thing? Yeah. Whatever that thing may be, what is its source? And I think that's what makes it like an urban legend. Those two words are so like, not to get more into our phonetics part, but everyone put on your phonetics and your verbiage caps really quick, and we can talk about words. But like those two words put together is like, oh wait, is this thing a legend, or is it something that like 12-year-olds talk about at the lunch table? Like, what makes it a legend?
Yeah. So
that's how I feel.
So the way that I've always thought about like an urban legend, and if I could boil it down to its simplest definition, the way I would define it almost would be as like modern day mythology, right? And to put it in a little bit of like a broader context, I came up with another definition because I was like, that's a little too vague. So I would call it an unlikely story that belongs to a specific place or a specific group, and it's presented as and meant to be taken as true, right? So it's different from you're spinning a yarn about, some bullshit thing and everybody knows it's bullshit and it's a totally fictional story. It's a story that's been told to you as if it's true. It's a story that you're telling to other people as if it's true. It's unlikely in the manner of which the story occurs, right? Whether it's shit about Bigfoot, whether it's shit about fucking serial killers or anything like that, right? Or whether it's just nonsense about that lost episode of SpongeBob where Squidward shoots himself, right?
Right.
So But the thing is, you hear it, and it's told to you as if it's true, and you pass it around as if it's true, right?
Right.
Because there's no way really to verify if it's false. So that's
Which is just as good as not being able to verify if it's true. right?
exactly
It's like,
exactly.
well, you
it's
don't
almost
really
like that
know that
voter
it's not
fraud
true,
issue
so
going on.
I'm going to tell everyone. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna let everyone know about it.
and sometimes though they can be true. They could an urban legend to me could be a totally true story that is something that did happen once that has been like completely embellished and has been passed around. So like for instance, going back to the car flashing the headlights example, right? That could have happened to somebody somewhere at some time very easily, right? But that story gets passed around, it gets embellished, right? All of a sudden, it's a according to the story now, it's a common gang initiation thing. You got to watch out, right? So that's how that shit gets spread around and embellished. But that's a true thing that could have happened very easily.
Yeah, they're almost like warnings. These stories are warnings for, if it happened one time, it's spread around like, oh, don't take candy from strangers, like that type of story. It's just been like,
but do take candy from a baby if you
yes, every time.
Yeah.
And take candy from me because I'm not a stranger.
Yeah,
so.
and that's why I would compare it to almost like mythology in the past sense. It's like this is modern day mythology because some stories are cautionary tales, right? Of just like how some ancient stories mythology are cautionary tales, like, hey, don't do this or this will happen.
Icarus.
You know? Yeah, exactly, right? But then there's also urban legends that can be sort of like about local folk heroes, right? Or like, word of mouth stories about some guy that everybody knows, but like no one's ever confirmed with him whether it's true or not, right?
Oh yeah, we had one of those growing up.
Yep. Then there could be urban legends about monsters, right? So, and then there's also ones that are humorous and not meant to be taken totally literally, and then there's like ones that are half true, half false, right? And
it runs the gamut.
Exactly.
And we don't know. We don't know whether or not it's true, but it's the sort of thing that's passed around, and it is more of a modern type of story, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to share urban legends that we are aware of, or maybe some that we heard when we were kids, or things that have been passed around that, like Mitch said, we don't really know whether or not they're true, but there's just something that, like, things that we have come across throughout our lives.
Yeah,
it's been a part of us as we've been growing, for sure. And I definitely have one of those. If you guys don't mind, I can jump into mine right now.
I would
pulled it up.
friend.
So growing up, I grew up in this little tiny town in Massachusetts called Millis. Anyone listening probably has never heard of it. It's a tiny town, couple thousand people. But growing up, we were always told about this cryptid called the Dover Demon. And apparently, like, it's in my area, the Metro West area of Massachusetts. It's a very popular story, and basically the creature is much like the Jersey Devil that I mentioned, where it's just kind of creeps around the woods. It's got red eyes. But a lot of the stories that I heard as kids was more, the creature was more of a gray, like an alien type. A long, slender body, big red eyes, gray. And growing up, we always, we were always warned about the creature. Like, don't go down Farm Street late at night because the Dover Demon will get you. And it was like, it happened all the time. It was like, it was one of those stories that, like, I feel like everyone got told that went to my high school. And so we used to always try to go and, like, investigate it. We would go and try to find him. That was like our big thing. We would get super stoned and like go around and like run around the woods
and try to catch him.
Yeah, we got the big net. We tried to catch him, but there was like this in Dover. There was this area called Hell's Gate. It was actually like it was like an entrance to a mansion, an old mansion. I think it was sometime like late 1800s was when it was built. But it was, no one had lived in there since like the 60s. So like the house was all falling apart. Yeah, it was awesome.
Creepy.
Basically all that was left was like the foundation and some stone pillars left behind. But the gate leading into that mansion was called Hell's Gate, and it was like the most terrifying stone arch thing I've ever seen. And unfortunately, I could not find a picture. I took pictures of it when I was a teenager, and I can't find them anywhere. I looked everywhere, but when I find them, I'll post them on the blog. But it's just overrun. It looks really cool. And like, I just remember being a kid and going there, and like one of my friends, I was like probably 14. My buddies were like 17, 18. And they used to take us out there and just shut the engine off and shut the lights off. And it was pitch black. And we would just sit here. We would just sit there. And I remember the one time we were hanging out, trying to find the Dover Demon. I remember hearing a Fisher cat, which I didn't know it was a Fisher cat at the time. Yeah. And I heard that blood curdling scream, and it scared the shit out of me. And ever since then, I mean, that story, like, I don't know why the Dover Demon always comes back to me. And like, it was always an urban legend that we always heard. It's always been a part of like our childhood. Like we still, when I get together with my buddies every once in a while, we'll talk about, somebody will say something funny and they'll be like, oh, the Dover Demon did it. So it's always like, it's perpetuated our existence forever. And
can you imagine if you found out that every photo that gets taken of the gate just fucking develops as like bushes? Like in the gate is only there when you're there.
When you're there, ooh, that'd be sweet.
Fucking, that's why you can't find the photos.
It's oh my god, yeah.
I mean, now's the time to start that. That's an urban legend right now that we can start.
Actually, let me see it. Now I really want to find those pictures and see if it's just the bush.
You can't. Actually, every time you take a picture of it, it's just the woods. It's just the woods.
Yeah.
And
the mansion isn't even technically real. It's just a figment.
Right.
I think that says that we got to go to this mansion someday.
Yeah, I'd love to go do it. It's very, I mean, it's pretty easy. I still remember how to get to it. I mean, we visited it so many times, and it's really close to my parents' house in Millis. But I would love to go visit it. I don't know I mean, I haven't been there in 15 years, so who knows where it's at now. But I just remember it's at the end of this like long, unpaved, bumpy road. In the middle of the woods. There's no lights, no anything. And you just like, you'll be cruising down into complete darkness. And then on your right, this big giant gate appears on your right-hand side. And it was just the most terrifying thing when we were kids. Cause we would just try to we would try to egg each other on by seeing who could go the furthest into the mansion. And, and then we would just scare the shit out of each other the whole time.
Now it's the Dover Dunkins.
It's the Dover. It actually is a Dunkin's at the end of the road when you go to enter.
Of course.
Yeah. That's the landmark we use to find the road, because you have to turn off of I think it's 27 in Dover, and you turn off. It's at a Dunkin' Donuts. You turn off that street right before the Dunks, and the street's right there.
Is just managing the place now.
Yeah, it's just inside.
I got kids. What are you gonna do? I got fucking kids.
He's got glasses and the mustache.
Yeah.
But I did find a little history. I had never, when we were kids, I never dug into. I mean, obviously, we didn't have the internet as it is today, but I never really dug into it until we started talking about doing the urban legend stuff. And I did find a little excerpt of the sighting. So there was only. It's interesting. There was only ever one sighting of him, and it was in April 21st, 1977. It was 2 days. It was 2 sightings. So April 21st was the first, and then April 22nd, 1977 was the second date. So this thing has been like, he's only been seen twice. And then if you look, like, that urban legend has gone through generations since then. Like my whole school, everything. But I do want to read. I have this little paragraph about the first sighting I want to read to you guys that I found. That was kind of cool. It gives you a little bit, little description of kind of what he looked like, but I'll start it now. It says, the bizarre tale begins at 10:32 p.m. on April 21st as 3 17-year-olds, Bill Bartlett, Mike Mazzocca, and Andy Brody, are driving north on Farm Street. Bartlett, who's behind the wheel of the Volkswagen, spots something creeping along a low wall of loose stones on the left side of the road, which could very much have been the Hell's Gate that I was mentioning. Because that whole road is just all old, like Revolutionary era stone walls that are just they go forever into the woods. At first, he thinks the image is a dog or a cat until his headlights shine on it and he realizes it's nothing he's ever seen before. The figure slowly turns its head and stares into the light. Its two large, round, glassy, lidless eyes shining brightly like two orange marbles. Its watermelon-shaped head, resting at the top of a thin neck, is the size of the rest of its body. Except for its oversized head, the creature is thin with long, spindly arms and legs and large hands and feet. The skin is hairless and peach-colored and appears to have a rough texture, like wet sandpaper. Bartlett subsequently tells cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, standing no more than 3.5 to 4 feet tall, the figure is shaped like a baby's body with long arms and legs, which is I thought that was a very funny description. It had been making its way along the wall, its long fingers curling around the rocks when the car's light surprised it. Unfortunately, neither of Bartlett's companions sees the creature. The sightings last only a few seconds before Bartlett can speak and the car leaves the scene. Then the creature is gone. Bartlett drops his friends off and goes to his Walpole Street home. Visibly upset, he walks through the door and the father asks him what's wrong. Bartlett relates the story and later sketches what he'd been seeing. And I'll post the sketch. It just looks like it looks like the alien from Independence Day when the exoskeleton opens and the little guy comes out. It kind of looks along those lines. But what's funny is we growing up, the urban legend, it got changed so much because there was times, like I said before, where we were told it was like a Jersey Devil type of creature, which is more like a chupacabra type of creature, like a hairy rodent type of thing. But but then the one I always kind of related to was the gray, the alien. So we always me and my friends always thought of it as an alien, even though they called it the Dover Demon. But yeah, it's just funny how that one sighting in 1977 kind of created this urban legend for all of us, for us as kids growing up the next town over. And I'm sure everyone in that Metro West area, people in Dover, are probably all know all about it. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. And that's kind of when we started talking about urban legends, this is the first one that came to mind. This is the one that I've known the longest, that I figured is the most relatable for me. So I had to share it with you guys. And it's not the most interesting. I wish there was slaughtered cows or they did something cool, but there was a weird little alien, and who knows, it could have been a gray that he saw that came down.
Well, see, I wouldn't expect there to be anything like that because, in a way, if there was all that physical evidence of slaughtered cows and fucking documented creepy things, then to me it's no longer an urban legend at that point because it crosses that threshold of, it could be true, it could be not be true, or to the point of where after it crosses that threshold, it's well, there's something to it, it loses the mystery. So to speak. It gains a new mystery, but it loses the original mystery that made it the urban legend.
Right, which is its own specific thing, because it's just something that you hear about when you're a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more your imagination is more willing to run wild.
Exactly.
So you're oh, okay, we're gonna go kill time, and this is what we're gonna go explore.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's how we're gonna spend our free time because we're 16, 17, we just got our licenses, but we really can't do anything. We can't go to a bar and get a drink. So we're just we're gonna get high and drive around and do this. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much what it was. We couldn't do much else in that small town. And this was pre-pandemic too. And there still was nothing to do back then. But yeah, it gave us a reason to go explore.
It's cool.
And find
now
some
you
cool
have
areas.
A narrative that you're playing along with. It's you
absolutely
just by being high in that car with your friends with that intention, you're making yourself part of the legend.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's more fun than that?
We're only perpetuating it further. And I'll tell my kids that story. But I'm going to tell my kids it was a real thing. It really ran into it. I'm going to keep this legend going. Yeah. But so that's my that was mine. My town was weird. Like I said, it was small. So I feel like a lot of urban legends were created in my town. And one of the big one, my best friend, my oldest friend, Tim, created. And it was this guy, Master Bike, who used to ride his bike everywhere in Millis, and we would see him like cruising around. We never knew his real name. We just called him Master Bike. And he would always appear out of nowhere. You'd always see him like riding down 109 or like, you know, and the thing that really was bizarre about him was he had like a Hare Krishna haircut. So it was like completely shaved, but then he had the ponytail in the back. But he wasn't a Hare Krishna. Like he didn't go around and wear the robes and go to people's houses. He was just an insane drug dealer in my hometown, which we never knew about until we were all adults, that this guy had been slinging heroin to people the entire time that we were growing up. So we created this myth about this guy that he was just some bike expert that just had an awesome bike that rode around town. And yeah, he turns out to be, he's supplying our whole town with heroin. So it ended up turning out to be kind of an interesting legend instead of an urban legend.
Right, but that's just like you had just created it yourself because you saw him all the time.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like the next door neighbor in Home Alone, right? Like
the creepy shovel guy.
This guy that's like hiding salt bodies, bodies in a salt barrel, you know? Because like he's just like this creepy guy that you're a kid, you see him, all of a sudden you're playing in the yard and he's there out of nowhere, but just because you're a kid, you weren't paying attention.
Exactly.
You know? You were just playing, you know? So Master Bike comes out of nowhere, you're like, damn, he's riding his bike again. Yeah. His hair is crazy. He should be wearing a helmet. But it's obvious
he
that
never
he
wore
doesn't
a helmet.
really you know, maybe he's not the most sound person in the area.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Third.
But he would appear everywhere, and that's where we kind of came up with the urban legend for him. Like he would, like it was almost like you'd be driving, and like my friend Tim would be like, "Oh, I haven't seen Master Bike today," and then he'd come around the corner, around the bend on his bike. Like you would always see him, and it was just like we created this.
It's like a quest giver that you're not high enough level for.
Yeah, exactly. An NPC that we can't exactly talk to. But yeah, it was funny. There was a lot of like stuff like that came out of our town. And I think it was just because it was so small. We were too far from a city. And you know, we didn't have a ton of people in our town. So I think we just kind of made up stories to keep ourselves entertained. And I'm sure that's how urban legends started back in the day too, was like somebody sitting around a fire telling stories. And and that's become a part of my my life. These crazy stuff. I'll never forget Master Bike. In fact, I still see him riding his bike around Millis whenever I go there to visit my parents.
Alive.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Kicking it.
I think he went to jail for a while for drug possession or something like that. But
something like that.
yeah, it was well known. After I left the town, after I moved out, when I went to college, it all came out that he was supplying the town with drugs and was in with some bad people. So
Support small businesses.
yeah, even if they're selling drugs. But
Buy local.
so yeah, that's my urban legend experience. It's been it was kind of interesting. I don't know how you guys if you have any relatable stories like I did growing up, I would love to hear it.
So I
have one that's almost crazy relatable. But
Sweet.
Mitch, did you want to go first?
Well, I wanted to just say something about to add to the whole mythos that we're building about what an urban legend is. Because in my book, right, Jarvis remember how I said like an urban legend is specific to like a group? So it could be like a regional group, like for instance with the Dover Demon, people around his area that he lives. But also that urban legend is specific to his group of friends, right? So to me, both of those are totally urban legends. Just the group that they're specific to is completely different. So, and I would say that you can have groups as varied as, ethnic groups, right? Have their own urban legends, right? You got regional groups, you got circles of friends, you got families
Cultures.
who have their own urban legends that are just in the family, right? So that's what I wanted to say. And I got a fun story that I could tell, but I'm going to let John go first.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So, Jarvis, you got the Mitch stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I hope I can do the same.
Thanks, dudes. All right, let's hear it.
So in high school, me and my friends would also drive around,
Yeah.
right? And like, maybe you're like spending some time like going to local fast food joints or whatever, but that gets old. Sitting in like a Denny's parking lot gets old.
Yeah.
And so you want to start to explore. So I grew up in a town called Coventry, Rhode Island. Big town, not a lot of people. And stories that were passed around were these like three main stories that I can think of that we would go and like explore these places. So one of them being we had our own Hell's Gate, and
Nice.
it's like it's very similar to the way that you describe your Hell's Gate, Jarvis, where there's this road. It's out in like the West Greenwich, Exeter area, so like one town over, and there's this old. They're not. It's not the coolest looking gate, Jarvis. Your gate sounds a lot cooler. These are just two old stone pillars that are at the entrance of a gravel road. And what you would do, and what we would do in high school, is we would drive down this road, and there were like older cars, I'd say cars from the 50s or 60s, parked on the side of this road with bullet holes in them. And as the story goes, is there was a gangster shootout that happened like out in the middle of West Greenwich, down this road, and there were bullet holes in the cars, and the road itself would be haunted. Now, whether or not they were haunted by these gangsters, I don't know. That's not something that we thought about when we were 16 or 17.
Yeah.
But what we would do is we would drive down the road, we would turn the lights off, and you just freak each other out, right? Because like, oh, your lights are off. Maybe you see something, maybe you don't. Like some people are probably smoking, like, so it's like that sort of idea. So like our Hell's Gate was sort of the lamest of this like trifecta of urban legends that we would go out like on maybe a monthly or weekly occurrence and just like drive around to these three places. So Hell's Gate being the first one. Another one a little bit further down this same road in Exeter is Mercy Brown's grave.
Oh,
which
yeah.
some people might know about. It's a local, I'm putting in quotes here, a vampire grave that when I was in high school or even middle school, people started telling us of this vampire, and she was buried at a local cemetery that like was right next to an old church. And as the story goes, she died, and she was buried, and then for some reason, her family, some of our other family members had also died, and at one point they exhumed these three bodies, and two of the bodies had been like consumed by the earth, like a lot of the flesh had been worn away, but her body, when it was exhumed, was still intact. And not only was her body still intact, but her heart had, as her family members described it, fresh blood in it. And so her heart that has fresh blood, even though apparently doctors were like, it's fairly common, the way that you didn't bury her that recently, but everyone was just like, oh, she's a vampire. And this was in a time where consumption or tuberculosis was sort of taking a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
And so what you were doing, these people were coughing up blood, so the initial reaction is, oh, they're a vampire. They don't necessarily know like the science or the medical story behind it. And so Mercy Brown is this like local vampire legend. So we would drive there, and same thing, like we'd leave Hell's Gate, we'd go down the road a little bit further. It's right on the corner. There's this big spooky white church, sort of like nondescript church with a cemetery, and you'd go in the cemetery and you as a kid, you'd swear that it was colder than outside the cemetery, that sort of stuff. And so that, we would explore there a little bit. You'd get scared. You'd tell each other the story. At one point, I could have sworn everyone was calling it Nellie's grave, but maybe they were just kids and they didn't really know what it was. But
like Nellie the
doing
rapper?
a little bit, yeah, Nellie what?
Like Nellie the rapper?
Yeah, Nellie the rapper. He was buried there with his grills and his Air Force Ones.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely. And so like that, to me, was the second most exciting, and the third being the Lad School, which is this like old, no longer around, and it wasn't, the buildings were still around when I was in high school, but they've actually torn the buildings down, and I'm trying to find like the right words for what this institute was, but it was like a mental ward, or I hate to use the term asylum because it seems awful, and these people were people, but as a story goes, and this is a little bit more true because they did do some like fucked up stuff to the patients that were at this ward. Right?
Big surprise.
There's multiple buildings, and there was like, you'd go and you'd sort of like drive around this like, weeds growing out of the roads and stuff, sort of abandoned. Some buildings look like they're about to topple over, and you would just go and you would tell stories about like, oh, this person had a lobotomy, and this was the lobotomy building, and this was we didn't really know what it was. We just were like pointing fingers. And then cut to like maybe 5-10 years later, I ended up working on a movie at the lad school before they tore all of these buildings down. And like, I still to this day will tell people that place was haunted and talk about how it was like one of the scariest experiences of my life, like working 12 to 14, 16-hour days at this place and being there at like 3 a.m. and having to like leave. And there was a room set up that we were like going in at the beginning of this job. Like art department hadn't been in there or anything. They had all these like operational chairs set up in a circle in a room, you know? So it was the type of place that like a lot of kids would go, maybe graffiti, probably drinking, smoking, hanging out. But like at the same time, it was a really like a scary place that like, just like itself was legendary.
Yeah.
Because it was a type of place that like people didn't necessarily talk about what was going on there because it was so bad, right? They were doing these things to these patients, experimenting on these people that had these mental health issues. And so I think a lot of the times the actual stories that were happening there were sort of buried because the doctors aren't talking about them. The patients and their families aren't talking about them because there's sort of this shame behind it. And so the generation above my generation would like, oh yeah, that's the lad school. That's that place where those things happened, you know? So you would create your own sort of stories behind it. And that to me was so much fun. It was like exploring these urban legends like as a kid. And like, that's how I remember experiencing them, is just like, oh man, like that place, that's the place that so-and-so died. And we never really knew, you know, it was just like what we heard at the lunch table from this other group of friends. And we were like, oh, they went there last weekend. Let's go there this weekend. And you just sort of like egg each other on. But yeah, those are like the main things that I remember as a kid, and like going and exploring them was a lot of fun. And I recently I just went to Mercy Brown's grave last week. I rode my bike there. Yeah. I rode right past Hell's Gate, and then I went to the grave. It's like all like really, it's like really like nicely maintained, this whole like old church that is abandoned in this grave. So it seems like it's like involved in some sort of like National Historic Society or something. Yeah. And I also rode my bike around where the lad school used to be, and now the buildings are just gone, and it's like a bird sanctuary, and they have like some firefighter training back there and stuff. So it's like some of these places you can still visit, some of them you can't, but I almost like I did a little bit of research, but I almost like didn't want to do too much research because I felt like it was going to like taint my memory of like what these urban legends were or what they are, you know, because it's really just like a narrative that I created in my head, or that my friends and I created, you know? And so that was like way more fun than actually knowing like the real story.
So when I was a little kid, and I'm talking like little like 5 to 8 years old, right? And I used to misbehave. My mom used to take me for a ride, and she would drive past the lad school, and she would say, I'm going to take you to the bad boy school if you don't stop, right? So it's funny. I don't know. I was just laughing about that in my head while you were telling your story, because it's like I didn't have like that same experience because I was in that age group where like I didn't live close enough where like we would go like around the lad school or anything like that. But like I remember that from being a little kid, of her taking me for rides and being like, I'm going to take you to the bad boy school if you don't stop. And that's the school that she meant.
That's the place.
So it's funny. We also had a place like that. The next town over, Medfield, had Medfield State Hospital. And that's where all the insane people would go. And same thing. My mom would threaten me and be like, I'm going to send you to Medfield State if you don't knock it off.
Yep.
She said it just like that, too. That's my best impression I could do of my mother. But it was so freaky. And then, you know, as we got older, we started exploring it, and then, it became part of our childhood. It's just, it's crazy. Cause like that, it's funny that lad school is also like, there's a version of it we have. And it's funny how we all kind of grew up the same way, and urban legends have kind of like crafted themselves into our lives. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Cause it's the type of like campfire story type of stuff that just like comes up when you're a little bit bored of the normal conversation, right? It's just like, oh, okay, we've talked about movies, we've talked about video games, like we've talked about work or what have you, and you're just like, oh, what about the lad school, or what about Medfield, like the Medfield Hospital? Do you remember when so-and-so told us? And so that's where that like folklore sort of campfire passed down. Like I think when we were prepping for this episode, it's like a game of telephone, basically.
Pretty much.
Totally.
the best urban legends are like a game of telephone that's maybe been going on for like 50 years, right, Jarvis? Because you mentioned 1967 was when that, right? Dover Demon
77.
thing. So, yeah. So,
but also like it changed too, because remember I said like we saw it as a gray, but then there was other people that described it as a little rodent. So yeah, like it's funny how it changes depending on who you hear the story from. It's pretty cool.
Right, because you're a kid and you don't really know. Like that's why I'm like, I could have sworn when I was growing up, someone was like Nellie's grave, Nellie the vampire, and looking into it, there's no Nellie associated with this story. I don't know where that came from, but I bet if I mentioned that to my friends, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, the vampire grave, right?"
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Yeah, that's not the name, guys. Like, what are you talking about?" But that was just what we accepted, and for some reason, it was something that always stuck in my head. Were Nellie's grave? Oh, we're going to Nellie's grave. That's what we were going to Hell's Gate and Nellie's grave, and yeah, so man. Let's go someday, all of us.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's do
down. That sounds
we'll do
like
a burn
fun
ride.
time.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So, Mike and Mitch, what do you guys have for relatable stories?
So I have two, because they're both kind of brief, right? And the first one I want to tell is a family related, what I would consider to be like an example of like a family urban legend, right? And it's similar to Jarvis's master bike guy, right? So same vein
I
of
love
like
hearing
that.
you guys say master bike. Sorry, it's so funny to me.
Same vein of like, folk hero styled urban legend.
But this guy was not a hero though.
Well, no, you get what
Come
I mean.
on, maybe to some.
Master Bike was not a
you
hero.
get what I mean though. Like that public figure kind of, not public figure, but like the larger than
Everyone knows
life
him.
person, right? So to speak.
Yeah.
So all the time I hear stories from my mom and her sisters about a guy who's, for the sake of the story, his name is Uncle Kenny, right? And it was their uncle, who basically their mother's brother, right? And the thing you gotta know about my Uncle Kenny is he was a fucking wild guy who was really rough around the edges. He was an enforcer for the local mob, right?
Nice.
So, but there's a lot of crazy stories that I hear about him all the time. But my favorite one is about the time he met the Rolling Stones.
Oh.
So, this was, I don't know the exact year, but this is a story I've heard my entire life. It's always been told to me as if it's true. I've just assumed that it is, right? Because based on the other stories I've heard about this guy, it seems like it probably is true. So, this must have been in like the 60s or the 70s. Rolling Stones, I guess, they played a show at Rocky Point, right? If you know where that is in Rhode Island.
I don't know where that is.
All right, so it's
where is that, Mitch?
So Rocky Point it was like, it's not around anymore, but it was like an amusement park, carnival place sort of thing.
Whereabouts in Rhode Island was it?
I don't know where
It was in Warwick.
Yeah.
It's in Warwick. Yeah.
Oh, East Warwick.
Yeah.
Yeah, East Warwick, right next to East
So
Warwick.
I guess they played a show at Rocky Point, and things got kind of rowdy at the show, and things got wild, and for some reason or another, ended up with the Rolling Stones getting arrested, right? And they got put into Warwick jail or Providence jail, whatever jail it was, right? So in the meantime, I guess my Uncle Kenny had been out drinking that night, and he was being rough and being rowdy, and he ended up getting pulled in to the police station. And while he's there, he gets put into the cell. And apparently this is the kind of the story that he told my mother and her sisters, right? He says he got put into the cell with some type of British guy, right?
I love where this is going.
And he was like, this fucking guy, I couldn't understand a word he was saying. His accent was so thick, right? And so he's talking to this British guy, and I don't know if it was Mick Jagger or Keith Richards, but it was one of those two. I forget which one it was, but he's, both of them are kind of rough guys, right? So they start talking shit to each other, right? And, the Rolling Stones, they're celebrities. So they say, so I guess one of them says to my uncle, "What the fuck do you think you're doing? Do you know who the fuck I am?" Right? Because, he's a famous rock star, right? So, but the thing is, in my Uncle Kenny's world, he's an enforcer for the mafia, and he's like a well-known person around here, and you should know better than to fuck with him. So he looks at him, and he looks him dead in the eye, and he says, "Do I know who you are? Kid, you better learn who's who in the fucking zoo." And then apparently, the guards were listening to this, and they were like, "Okay, we got to separate these two before Kenny kills this guy." So they took him. They had to take him out of his cell, and they put him in a different cell.
Oh my god!
So I don't know if that story's true. It's always been told to me as if it is. I want it to be so bad. I would love to talk to fucking Keith Richards or fucking Mick Jagger or one of those guys and see if they remember that. To see if that's actually true.
You're in jail.
Yeah. Remember that time
your uncle?
You were in jail in Rhode Island and this fucking Italian guy who looked like Mr. Clean started talking shit to you and said you better learn who's who in the fucking zoo?
That's hilarious.
Have you looked into it at all, Mitch?
I have never looked into it at all. I've never looked if there was any like interviews from the Rolling Stones about that. I've never actually looked into whether that Rocky Point concert actually happened or anything like that. But like I said, this is like an urban legend to me, for my family.
Awesome.
Is
For your
something
family,
I've been told all my life, have accepted as true, right? Have been told as if it was true. In my mind, it's true. That happened. That's something that happened with my Uncle Kenny.
I love it. Is Kenny still around?
No, he died years ago. I only met him a couple of times when I was younger. My one memory of him is probably when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and he tried to offer me a beer.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to. Man, I wish I could have met Kenny. He sounds awesome.
Dude,
That does sound awesome.
I could honestly fill an entire podcast with stories I've heard about my Uncle Kenny, but I want to.
We'll have to do a Kenny episode.
Yeah, I want to pivot. Maybe we'll do Urban Legends Part 2, Family Edition. I don't know. I'll bring on my mother. She can tell some fucking hilarious stories. So I'm gonna pivot to more of the paranormal sort of urban legend, right? For the area that I live in. So like John, I live in Rhode Island, but I live in a different part of Rhode Island. But the cool thing about Rhode Island is we're so small and everything's kind of so together that like we're all kind of like. Even though I don't live near Mercy Brown's grave, or I didn't really live near the lad school, I still know about all these places. So I live in North Providence. It's a small town. It's just north of Providence. Not to be confused with the north side of Providence. It's a different town. Right. But the towns that are near me, one of them is Smithfield, Rhode Island. And whenever people say urban legend, the thing I always immediately think of is in Smithfield, there was this place that was called Witch's Road in the Witch Tree, right? So
I think I've heard of this.
So in Smithfield, Rhode Island, there's this road, and it's kind of known as Witch's Road, right? And at the intersection of where this road goes, so it's pretty much two roads, right? And they intersect, and it's like a three-way intersection. And smack dab in the middle of the intersection is this big, gigantic oak tree. And it was this roundabout where the oak tree was in the middle of the road, and you had to go around the tree. And it was like a roundabout or a rotary or whatever you call it, right? And this tree was like 100 years old. And I guess when they built the road, either there wasn't enough budget or enough time to clear it, or like they had no desire to clear it, or it was too big. So whatever reason, they built the road going around the tree. And according to what I read, the tree was at least 80 feet tall. So as you can guess, when you put a tree in the middle of the fucking street, people crash into it. So people used to hit this tree all the time. Usually minor accidents, like, you know, like bumping into it, stuff like that. But I've been told that there's been at least one fatal accident involving the tree. I don't know if it's true. I've heard it. It could be true. There could be more than one. So it is what it is. But as far as which of the two roads is Witch's Road, to me, they both are. So the roads in question are, there's Log Road and then there's Man School Road, right? And the basic premise of the story goes like this. So you drive down Witch's Road and you go to the witch tree and you drive around it 3 times. And when you pull off down the road, something happens. And what is that something? Well, according to some people, something would come and chase you. So supposedly there would be like a black truck that would show up behind you and it would tail you, and then you wouldn't be able to see the driver, and then all of a sudden you would just lose it, right? But according to some people, it wasn't a truck. It was a motorcycle ridden by a ghostly biker, and he would follow you
Yes.
and then speed
Johnny
past you
Blaze.
and disappear. Yeah, so Ghost Rider would come instead. So,
Hell yeah.
but then, according to other people that I've talked about with this, they said that after you drive it around it 3 times, you would see the witch that the tree is named after. So supposedly a long time ago, there was a witch who lived in the area. Name is lost to time, and the road went past her house, which is obviously no longer there. So some people said that, like, when you went around the tree 3 times, the witch would appear at the tree and reach out at you, or sometimes you would see her walking up or down the road, or standing at the side of the road in the woods. And then there's another variant of the story that says if you wanted to see the witch, you would have to go around the tree 13 times on Halloween night. And then there's another version of the story that said that if you did that 13 times, you would see the devil instead. So, to add to the creepy factor, right, around the witch tree and on both roads, this is stuff I've learned from talking to people, is that during the 70s and 80s, and even into the 90s for a little bit, the road was like pitch black. There were not a lot of street lights on them. You'd pretty much be relying on your own headlights to do all the heavy lifting as far as being able to see. So, you know, the way this story has always been told to me, picture this. It's the 70s, maybe 80s. You're driving down the road. You come to the intersection. Smack dab in the middle of the tree is this big, massive oak tree. It's old. You can tell it's fucking old. The bottom's all banged up from people banging into it with their cars. There's barks ripped off the trunk. There's signs on the tree saying caution. Whole 9 yards. And it's the dead of night. It's dark. There's no one on the road but you. Now, you've heard about this tree from someone else. You've heard about Witch's Road. Now, imagine you're not in the car alone. You're a teenager. You're with a bunch of your friends. You've been out, doing rebellious teenager things, whatever that was. Maybe you were smoking the reefer. Hopefully not drinking and driving, but listen, you probably did that too. So, now your friend is in the back seat, and he's telling you about what someone else told her about what happened when they drove around the witch tree 3 times after hearing about it from her friend. And now all your friends, they're trying to tell you to drive around the tree. They want to see what happens. Peer pressure in a nutshell. So you go around once, nothing happens. It's just a story, right? Nothing's going to happen. You go around the second time. Now you're starting to have second thoughts. It's just a story, right? So now one of your friends is in the backseat is like begging you not to do it a third time. He's freaked out. Nothing's even happened and he's freaked out. But now at this point, you're in the middle of the fucking roundabout. You gotta finish. You have nowhere else to go but around the tree again. So you carefully go around the tree a third time, trying not to crash into it. Everything's tense. It's so quiet in that packed car of teenagers that you can actually hear the radio for once. And nothing happens. Except, as if right on cue, right, a black truck pulls up to the intersection. Now it's dark. You can't see who's driving. And he's got to wait for you to get out of the fucking middle of the street. So he's just sitting there. So you pull onto Man School Road and you drive. And there he is right behind you. I mean, it's just a coincidence, right? I mean, he only has 2 options. He could turn onto Log Road or he could follow you down Man. You're just going the same way, right? So he follows you down, man, for what feels like an eternity. At this point, you're fucking freaked out. You don't know who this guy is. You're convinced yourself he's following you. You went around the tree 3 times. The legend is real. So maybe instead of speeding up, you're actually so worried and panicked that you don't even realize it, but you're slowing down. And this guy zooms right past you, right into the dark of night. He's fucking gone. So was he the black truck you've heard follows people? Or was he just some guy who had somewhere he needed to be and that's why he zoomed past you? Or is he a guy who knows the story too? He lives in the area and he's been driving around all night with his black truck looking for fucking teenagers to scare. Right?
I like that.
So, but the thing that makes it an urban legend is it doesn't matter at that point what's true and what's coincidence. Because, the next day, you're going to go tell your friend that wasn't with you guys that night that crazy thing that happened to you on Witch's Road. And that's how the fucking urban legend starts.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
so the sad thing about Witch's Road, unfortunately, is a few years ago, they cut the witch tree down. So the witch trees started to get a little too old. It was dying. It was all diseased and decaying. It was starting to get like more and more dangerous to leave it up. So they chopped it down. But they did replace it with a new sapling and guardrails and a new stop sign. So there's the whole area is a lot safer now. Supposedly, it hasn't really stopped the urban legend, despite them replacing the tree. It's still kind of like a local thing that people still kind of know about. So like the older generations, like my mother and my father and their generations, they all know about Witches Road, all from North Providence because it's close by, right? A lot of people in their generation are familiar with it. My older brother, I have an older brother who's 6 years older than me. Him and his generation know all about Witches Road. In fact, when I was doing research, I found in 2018, there's an article in my town's newspaper, the Valley Breeze, about local filmmakers from the town trying to make a movie about Witches Road and the Witch Tree. And the funny thing was, I was reading the article and I recognized the people's names, right? Because it's a small town. I don't know them personally, but I knew their names. I've heard them before. I couldn't remember if they were people that I went to school with who were, multiple grades above me, or if it were people my older brother or my cousins went to school with. But the thing is, like, they knew about Witches Road. They knew about the Witch Tree, and they were trying to make a movie about it. So, although the thing is, I don't know how much longer that legend's going to be around, because the way I see it is, I don't think Gen Z really does like I could be wrong, but I don't think they really do like the creepy old school urban legend stuff, like haunted places and stuff like that. For a lot of the Zoomers, their urban legends are like things on the internet, right? Like YouTube videos and creepypastas.
Slender Man.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's their urban legends, right? They don't do, like, to them, Witches Road is like fucking old school boomer garbage.
Right. They need digital ghosts. They want to be scared digitally.
Exactly. So I don't think the urban legend of Witches Road is going to be around in like 20 years. I might be wrong. I hope I'm not, because I think it is like a cool, fun little legend of like, here's this creepy tree that used to be here and you used to be able to see the devil and shit, and Ghost Rider would come and chase you, but
yeah, it sounds awesome.
But now the symbol's gone. Everything that ties it together.
Exactly. So that's why I think that like that's a legend that's unfortunately going to die with my generation, right? Which kind of sucks. But that's always what I think of when I hear urban legend. Is I think of the stories about Witches Road, and I've only been to that place once when I was a little kid in daylight, and it wasn't even like a spooky thing. It was just like driving past the tree. I remember seeing the tree in the middle of the road, and that's when I probably first heard about Witches Road, because my mother probably turned to me and said, "Oh, hey, this is Witches Road. That's the witch tree." And then she probably told me the story, and ever since then, it's been in my head, and I've never forgotten it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Threatening to throw you to the witches like she was threatening you with the lad school.
Yep. She's going to take me to the witches school.
We'll have to post pictures of it, because I too have seen the witch tree, and it's so bizarre. It's just in the middle, or it was just in the middle of the road.
Yep.
Like
that's
it
the
just
best
grew
way
straight from the asphalt.
That's the best way I could describe it, is like picture like a circle of asphalt, and directly in that circle, tree.
Right. There's not like a garden bed. There's not like a berm or anything. It's just a tree, and then surround like the roots, basically the base of the tree. The asphalt would come right up to it.
Yeah, and they say Rhode Island's roads are bad because of the potholes. We got literal trees in the middle of the road over here.
Yeah,
all right,
so
this
road
photo,
when I was a kid that had a tree in it too. Why would they do that,
dude?
Get rid of the tree.
Near a friend of mine's
I'm looking
house,
at it right now. This is insane.
Near a friend,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Near a friend of mine's house, there's what we call the worst street in North Providence. It's a tiny little street, and just in the middle of the street is just a fucking rock.
What?
Love it.
Just a rock.
Love it.
I don't know why it's there.
They're like, we're not getting rid of this rock. We're not getting rid of this tree.
It sticks out of the middle of the road.
It.
It's probably about like total height is probably like 1.5 feet above the main road. It's just a rock in the middle of the road.
Shit.
Awful.
I
It
just
is a
like I'm
big
looking at
rock,
this
too.
photo of which tree, and it's blowing my mind that there's a yellow line that just goes, a double yellow line that just goes just to the right of this tree, and it's just like coming out of the pavement. There's a whole tree taking up a
we'll
whole.
have to post a picture of it.
This is insane. How did a town approve this?
It's just old,
Yeah.
It's just like old farm roads, that like eventually they get paved.
Exactly.
It's just easier
It's
It's
crazy.
easier, and it's like, well, okay, we'll just pave it. The tree's there, that's fine.
Yeah.
People know the tree's there. Everyone, Mitch has been talking about it. His parents' generation have been talking about it. They know to avoid the tree. They're freaking driving around it 13 times. Everyone knows the tree's there. It's fine. It's awesome.
That was great. That was a great story.
So those are my
Mitch.
urban
thanks,
legends.
That was awesome. What's Mike got for us today? I'm
Mike,
sure he's
you
gonna
gonna bring us home?
You gonna blow our tits off?
I don't remember any. So I
You don't
grew
remember
up.
any, so there weren't any that like stood out to you.
Oh,
from
so
your
the ones I
childhood, or-
remember are
Yeah.
like ghost stories from the book. Like you were worried that the guy with the hook was going to come and try to open your car door.
Or like the
You're
calls
worried
were coming
about,
from inside the house.
Yeah.
That kind of
People
shit, yeah.
knocking, and then if you knock back, that was your
Yeah.
death.
Or
But
wasn't
you'd
there
be,
one
like,
where a
compelled
lady
to
put a
wanna knock
dog
back.
in a microwave too? That was like an urban legend. Wasn't that one? It was in the movie too. I remember that being a scene in the movie.
Microwave tinfoil?
Well, yeah, we all did that.
I do that all the time.
Dude, there used to be a channel on YouTube that did that shit. Back in the day, it used to be called "Is It Okay to Microwave This?" Yeah.
We used to do, it wasn't called this then, but we used to do non-consensual Bloody Mary.
Okay, what's that?
Yeah, tell us.
So it's like, so the Bloody Mary urban legend was
Yeah.
if you are in a bathroom and you shut the door, turn all the lights off so it's completely black, and you light a candle if you can, but if you don't have candles around, you just stare in the dark room at the mirror and you say Bloody Mary 3 times in a row. The spirit of Bloody Mary would appear in the mirror. And then later on, growing up, I got access to the Candyman DLC. So you stood in the mirror and said Candyman 5 times, and the actor that played Candyman would show up.
Tony Todd.
So we would get, that shit would just spook you out, which was part of the fun. You know, you
Yeah.
get like terrified and
Yeah.
try and scare each other and feed off each other's energy. So if you had, me and my buddies, we did a lot of movie nights. So like the neighborhood, you know, we all rode bikes, we were in a crew together, and we'd go each other's houses and watch movies on like weekends or whatever. So one thing you would do if your buddy went to the bathroom and you heard him washing his hands, you would go over there, shut the lights off, and as fast as you could, try and say, like, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, like to summon it while he was still in the, so we would all do it to each other. And even if you were it would like the juice, I like to call it like the juice, like the jazz, like the energy that you would get from certain things that you're like hyped about, or just when you're with friends.
Yeah.
So like the excitement that you could still get even after years of Bloody Mary, like, and even if you just tried to do it to somebody else, and then like a half hour later they try to do it to you, you'd still be like, oh, you want to get out as quick as you can. And like that was the fun of it. You know, we were like never seriously trying to summon anything, but it was just the excitement that you would get with your buddies just trying to like, you know, edge each other on and like see if you could scare the other one, but you're scared too while you're doing it, but it's fun because you're both, you know, right there in the same place. And then
Candyman, the movie, made me terrified of that, of the Bloody Mary and all that stuff.
Jaws, afraid of the water.
Jawsome.
But it's natural though. And then old, like, that was kid stuff that I could recall. And then 2 things that when I was trying to remember things that really stuck out. I used to work at a grocery store for like 2 weeks. It was one of my first jobs out of high school. And there was this older dude who's probably like my age or a little bit younger now that worked in produce. And we would just crack each other up. So I was like 17 years old maybe, and there's like some 30-something-year-old guy. But we would all like, I think maybe whatever reason we had a bond. And then we would just kind of like egg each other on to just fuck off at work. So I remember once, like, I caught his eye at the end of one of the grocery aisles, and he pulls this like orange out of his apron, and then he bowled it down the aisle to me. Like, this is the middle of the day. We're both employees.
Yeah.
This is fruit that is potentially supposed to be sold to a customer. And just like the level of absurdity, and for this guy to like just step out of all my conceptions of behavior and like professionalism, and like to just, you know, it was like a real life Willy Wonka type moment. It was like hyper real. So I always remembered this guy. And then when I was working at the Army Navy store in Wakefield, Rhode Island. Shout out. This dude just shows up. And like this was before cell phones and like couldn't friend him on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So I only knew this dude from the hours that we worked together, those particular laughs.
Yeah.
Never interacted with otherwise. So he shows up at my work one day wearing a pith helmet. One of those like explorations. I haven't seen this guy in like 2, 3, 4 years, maybe. It's been a long amount of time. And he shows up, and I recognized him 100% because he was a mythological figure for me personally.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure if he knew who the hell I was. And he was looking for this cargo netting at the Army Navy store, and it was eventually like his buddy, I guess, had a horticulture operation in the woods somewhere, and they wanted to purchase this to cover it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's like he didn't want to come right out and say it. I'm kind of like talking to him a little bit. I'm just giddy that this guy's here, and he's really exists. He's like an actual living human being that I've been telling stories about. And he starts telling me about Interpol.
The band or the authority
Or the organization.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but I'm hanging on every word that he's saying, and he's just like, you got to think of these things these days, because Interpol's always watching. And he goes, I know you're worried about Interpol. I still fucking remember, this is like 10, 15 years ago now, whatever. He's like, I know you're worried about Interpol. What you need to do is, you need to take $2, you put it in an envelope, and you mail it to the Interpol Defense Fund. And
What?
yeah. But the way that he was able to deliver this message to me, and I was maybe like 19 at the time or something, like I was old enough to know better, but I still was like believing like, okay, Interpol Defense Fund. And then $2, but no address. Just put $2 in an envelope, send it to the Interpol Defense Fund. We didn't have what he was looking for. He went on his way and then like disappeared back into legend for me personally. Now, fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, I start going to school, you have more access, like Wikipedia shows up.
Yep.
And I find out that there's an actual agency called Interpol that is like spy, like joint information sharing. Like if there's a multinational criminal, that Interpol would be the agency with which that it keeps track of it. And I'd only just heard that word from that one guy, weirdly, in the Interpol defense like 5 years later. And, oh man, I wish I knew. But it's almost better that I don't know who the hell this guy was. You know what I mean? Because if you go and you friend him on Facebook, now all of a sudden like the stupid shit that he loves.
Yeah.
It's like meeting your heroes.
Yeah.
It's never good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which I'm sure you guys have heard, was in college there was this one guy, because I love quirky characters, and every time I would see him, he would tell me more about Fred Rogers, ex-CIA,
Right, Mr. Rogers.
Sniper.
and he highest kill count in the agency. So
Navy SEAL.
this was like, it's like must have been a running bit. For like, this must have been premeditated, because I would giggle every fucking time. I would see this dude and like not really interact with him otherwise, and I don't know how this started, but whenever he would pass me in the hall, he would just kind of get leaning close and just be like, highest kill count in the agency, and then walk, and then he'd walk away, and I'd just be like, eventually having to take a knee because I'd be laughing so hard. And it's just fond. Those are the fond urban legend memories. And there's always that like twinkle in the back of my mind being like, I wonder if he was.
So you had your own master bike, but he was like, you were interacting with him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So like your legend, you were legitimately interacting with, which is kind of cool. We didn't interact with master bike.
I'm so curious about this relationship that you built with this man after working at a place for 2 weeks. What the hell?
I'm a fast friend guy.
He just
If
like
you haven't noticed.
quickly took to you and was like, I'm gonna roll oranges at my buddy here that I've only been working with.
Mike
3
is like
days.
a dog. If you just say, if you smell his crotch, he's best friends with you. It's just like how it is. So he wants to be everyone's friend, and I approve.
And I can also be a captive audience too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're a good listener.
I was the only one because I was such a young kid. Maybe I was the only one there that wasn't dead-eyed.
Yeah.
Of course, right. Right.
So I got fired from that job in those 2 weeks. Because I always wanted. You guys know how I am. I wanted to use that goddamn microphone.
The intercom?
Yeah. The intercom for the store. This is all I wanted in my life. So eventually it happened where I had to run, like no one was picking up the phone or whatever. So I had to run from my checkout over to the phone. I picked up the phone. There was a call. So I was like, this is my chance. And I paged the manager. The manager was calling the phone. I don't even remember the guy's name. Paging Mr. Johnson. You have a call on line 6. It's a girl.
And you got fired for that?
I got fired for that.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Oh, dude, big laugh from the store. It was wonderful. You know, you heard someone in aisle 6 go,
Yeah.
That's great.
But that for me was a big, big win. The guy comes running from the back. He's yelling at me as he's running from the other end of the store. That is the most unprofessional thing. And that was my last day.
Wow. That's a great story.
Now I'm going to tell people that
that's how
story
I
and it's going to
met.
become its own urban legend.
Yeah. That's how it starts, dude.
So
Yep. You just started a new one.
take $2, put it in a white envelope, mail it to the Interpol Defense Fund.
On it.
No address, just Interpol Defense Fund.
Yeah, it'll find its way.
It'll get where it needs to go.
Yeah, it's like letters to Santa. You do North Pole, it gets there.
It gets there.
Yeah. Speaking
No
of
question
urban
there.
legends, Santa Claus. Woo-hoo.
What are you talking about? He's real.
Yeah, okay.
He is.
Wow.
Yeah, if you
100%.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah. He's real. Tim Allen played him in the movie. He's real.
So didn't Kurt Russell and Mel Gibson and
Yeah.
All
Have
right.
you ever seen any of
Anyways.
those guys in the same room?
No, I
Or
haven't.
have you ever seen them in the same
the
room with
Oscars.
Santa?
Well played.
Nah, fuck, Mitch is
Maybe
right.
not with Santa.
Mitch has got me. I'm
Yeah.
cornered. I'm gonna start lashing out. Oh,
Wow,
all right,
urban
boys.
legends. So yeah, they're all across the board, and it seems it's really a personal type of experience.
I also
the best
love-
ones are personal.
I love how much ours kind of all intertwined too. Like we all had an urban legend that kind of like something we learned as kids that we still think about, on a normal basis, which is really cool. So yeah, urban legends are fun. And
See, the thing that's cool to me is not only did we have ones that were similar, right? Which means that there is like a recurring theme to it all. But at the same time, all of ours were very different, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it wasn't like even John's Hell's Gate place in his town, even though it was very similar to yours, it was still different. There were different elements to the story. There were different reasons why it was a place, So
Right.
that's the cool part about it to me is like, a lot of places you have urban legends that are effectively the same story, but different variations of the same story, So that's the fun part about it. That's what I love so much.
And if you
about
find
them.
if you find yourself in Millis driving around, keep an eye out for Master Bike because I did recently see him a little bit, maybe like a month ago, riding around Millis. He's still out there 20 something years later, still riding his bike around. Now he's got a full shaved head, but you'll know exactly who he is. You cannot mistake this man. Like he is the Master Bike. You just look at him and and he's always riding up and down 109. You guys will see him. There's also a little old lady. I forgot about this until just now, but there was another little old lady who used to ride around Millis on her bicycle, and she had a full mustache, and we used to always talk about it. It was like this little old Asian lady. She was probably like in her 70s or so, and she had the thickest mustache I've ever seen on a woman, and I could not believe it. She would always be collecting. She was like the sweetest lady ever. She'd always be collecting cans like around town and then bringing it over to the
Mrs. Bike.
the deposit. Yeah, that was Miss Master Bike.
Mistress Bike.
But
Yeah.
there was something about weird people and bikes in my hometown. Don't even get me started.
Anyway,
Yeah. But keep an eye out
do
for
you have
them.
a favorite urban legend? Email us at beastyboysparanormal@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And should you happen to see either Keith Richards
Yep.
or the other guy.
Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
Ask
Mick
him about
Jagger.
Kenny from Rhode Island.
No. All you gotta do is say, "Who's who in the fucking zoo?" See what they do.
Right, and the light bulb will go off, a little twinkle in either of them.
Imagine if you triggered Mick Jagger, like you said that, and it triggered him, and he was like, he just goes on a bloodlust rampage. He's still like boiling over from that one incident.
He's been
in Rhode
training.
Island.
He's been training for 60 years.
Yeah, you're trying to get ready for that moment.
Just for a good comeback. Yeah.
Just attacks the nearest bald guy.
Oh my God. All right, boys. That was fun. That's Urban Legends for you. We'll probably have more.
Another one in the
I think
book.
there's so many more Urban Legends we can cover at this point.
Yeah.
But that was
Maybe if
just
people
our.
send some in, we can explore them, hear other people's firsthand accounts, and
I'd love
expand from there too.
I'd love to do a fan submitted Urban Legend episode. That'd be fun.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So please send us your stories, and we'll see you next time.
Love
Bye,
you, boys.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.